27%. That's how many Americans supported striking Iran when Operation Epic Fury launched this past weekend. That is not a majority. That's not even close. 43% opposed it. The rest weren't sure. So how does the most powerful democracy on earth go to war when 3 out of 4 of its citizens either oppose it or haven't made up their minds? The standard answers you're hearing right now: Trump went rogue, the military-industrial complex, you have Israeli pressure, AIPAC lobbying, and depending on your politics, one of those might sound right to you. But here's the thing. This has happened before. Under Democrats, under Republicans, under presidents who campaigned on peace, and presidents who campaigned on strength. So today I want to offer you an alternate hypothesis. I'm betting one you haven't heard before, because this is not a political one. It is a biological one, an explanation so fundamental that it's been operating inside your own body since you were born. And if it's right, it doesn't just explain how this happened, it predicts what happens next. So any good theory, the point of a theory, is to make accurate predictions. And in this video, we will make predictions. So first, this isn't a Trump thing. So I argue that it's a pattern. Because if this were just about one president or one party, then we wouldn't need a new framework to explain it. So August 2013, President Obama draws a red line on chemical weapons in Syria. Assad crosses it. Over 1,400 civilians were killed in a sarin gas attack. And here are the polls. A Reuters survey found only 9% of Americans supported a strike. 9%. 60% opposed it. Obama went to Congress for authorization. Congress was going to say no. Even his own party was against him. Only 29% of Democrats favored the strikes. If you remember, he backed down. But here's what's interesting. So within a year, he was conducting airstrikes in Syria anyway against ISIS without going back to Congress at all. He just skipped it. So the organism, found a different pathway to the same immune response. Then we have 2011. Obama launches a 2-month bombing campaign against Libya. This time he doesn't go to Congress at all. The administration argues the War Powers Resolution doesn't apply because it's not technically hostilities. Support starts at 47% and drops as the campaign drags on. The House of Representatives votes to defund the operation, but Obama continues anyway. 7 months, 30,000 NATO sorties, 10,000 airstrikes, and Gaddafi is killed. So this wasn't a Republican hawk. This was the president who ran on ending wars, the constitutional law professor, and the organism still acted. Now we go to March 1999. Bill Clinton launches a 78-day NATO bombing campaign against Yugoslavia. There was no UN Security Council authorization. There was no congressional vote. And the House of Representatives, when it did vote, rejected the mission in a tie, 213 to 213. This time, 53% of Americans thought the bombing was making things worse, not better. But Clinton continued anyway. So that's 3 presidents, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, Libya, Syria, Kosovo, Iran, different ideologies, different justifications each time, different parties, but it was the same result. The national system acts on threats it perceives, regardless of what its citizens want, regardless of what Congress says, often regardless of what the president himself originally intended. Political analysis gives you a different villain for each one of these cases, but this framework gives you one explanation for all of them. What's the mechanism that makes a democracy override its own people? But first, let me show you the full polling picture for Iran, because these numbers are pretty striking. January, 18% support. February, 21% support for the strikes. Then 27%. The strikes launch, and even after the rally around the flag effect, the best number any poll finds is 41% from CNN, and that's still a clear minority. The majority opposed this action at every single point in the timeline. So even among Republicans, the president's own base, only 55% approved after the strikes began. 32% of Republicans were unsure. So the organism acted despite uncertainty, even within the cells most aligned with its immune response. So here's the hypothesis I want you to just consider. You don't have to accept it, just consider it. And then we'll test it against the data and make predictions. So what if a nation with 335 million people isn't just a collection of individuals? What if it's actually a system that, under certain conditions, behaves the way any complex living system does when it perceives a threat? Not because the president commands it, not because lobbyists buy it, but because the system itself has dynamics that operate at scales we can't easily perceive from the inside. Right now, inside your body, a literal war is being fought. Your immune cells are hunting invaders. Your white blood cells are making life and death decisions, which threats to attack, which cells to sacrifice. It's strategic warfare with intelligence that rivals any military operation. And yet, you feel none of it. You didn't authorize it. Nobody asked you to vote. So here's a number. Your body contains 37.2 trillion cells, approximately. Your immune system makes up less than 1/10 of 1%. So under 1% of the system is making survival decisions for the entire organism. So now look at the comparison. The US military, 2.1 million people. That's 0.63% of the population. So in both cases, less than 1% of the total system is making life or death decisions without majority consent. So let me walk you through this step by step, because the parallel is remarkably specific. So step one, you have threat detection. In biology, your innate immune system detects a pathogen through pattern recognition receptors. In the national system, U.S. intelligence identifies Iran's nuclear enrichment program as a potential existential class threat. So this signal has been persistent for over 2 decades. Step two, you have an inflammatory cascade. So once a threat is detected, cytokines flood the area. Immune cells are recruited. The tissue gets hot and inflamed. In the national system, media coverage escalates. Iran gets mentioned hundreds of times a day on cable news. Hawks push for action. Doves push back. Trump's State of the Union calls Iran's ambitions sinister. The inflammation is the system debating with itself about the severity of the threat. So step three is adaptive immune activation. So your adaptive immune system is more targeted. It takes time to mobilize. In the national system, this looks like the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion. So you have carrier strike groups, you have F-35s were repositioned, cruise missile submarines moved into range. So this took weeks, actually. It was visible on satellite imagery, a specific deployment for a very specific target. Step four is the attack. In a biological system, antibodies bind to the actual pathogen. You have killer T cells destroy the infected cells. For Operation Epic Fury, you have strikes across 24 of Iran's 31 provinces, nuclear facilities, military command centers, leadership compounds. Khamenei is killed. And step five now is collateral damage. And healthy tissue gets damaged in the process. So you have over 1,000 Iranian casualties, including civilians. A strike hits a girls' school in Minab. 6 American service members are dead. Dubai's airport is shut down. Oil facilities hit. The Strait of Hormuz effectively closed shipping. So a biologist would look at this and say, that's a severe immune response, exactly what you'd expect when the system perceives the threat as potentially fatal. And step six, you have the anti-inflammatory response is already beginning. You have congressional pushback, calls for ceasefire, Chuck Schumer leaving a briefing and saying the administration's answers were completely and totally insufficient. Regulatory T cells are trying to suppress the inflammation. And then finally, step 7 is still to come. Memory cells. So the system learning. Its doctrines being updated, alliances reshaped, deterrence recalibrated. Okay, and here's where the framework proves it's not just about America. Iran retaliates, not because its citizens voted on it, because the national organism of Iran, wounded, activates its own immune response. So you have Operation True Promise 4, that's their name for their operation. Missiles and drones hitting U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, the UAE, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. You have strikes on Israel. A drone hits the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. The UK base in Cyprus is struck. So that's 9 countries are now in the line of fire. And look at the IRGC's Mosaic defense strategy. So you have small, independent cells operating autonomously. Mobile launchers disguised as civilian trucks. It's all decentralized. There's no central command required. So this is almost a textbook description on how your immune system works. Small, independent units detect and respond to threats locally without waiting for orders from the top. It's decentralized control. So neither American nor Iranian citizens voted on these actions. Both organisms acted on their own survival imperatives. So this framework applies symmetrically. So look at the consent gap. The organism acted when only 21 to 27% of its constituents supported the action, when 67% didn't even understand why it was acting, when 54% believed the action would make things worse, when 56% said the organism uses force too much. Even the organism's own political base could only muster 55% support after the strikes began. Your cells don't understand why the immune response is happening either. They just experience the inflammation. So here's where I want to do something no talking head on cable news is doing. So if this biological framework is correct, it shouldn't just explain the past, what happened. It should be able to predict the future. So let me make some specific predictions and you can hold me to them. So prediction number 1, the rally effect will fade fast. So right now support has bumped from about 22% to 36%. That's the biological equivalent of a cytokine surge recruiting immune cells to support an action already underway. But in every immune response, the anti-inflammatory phase follows. So I predict support drops below 25% within 4 to 6 weeks. Prediction number 2. So the Gulf states will behave like bystander tissue. So in biology, when an immune response is severe enough, healthy tissue near the infection gets damaged and launches its own inflammatory response. So we're already seeing this. Qatar shot down 2 Iranian jets. The UAE says it will not sit idly by. Saudi Arabia's largest oil refinery was hit. So I predict at least one Gulf state conducts direct retaliatory strikes against Iranian assets within weeks. Prediction number 3. Iran's proxy network activates in waves, not all at once. So Hezbollah has already broken its ceasefire and struck Israel. The OFU framework predicts that the Houthis escalate Red Sea attacks next. Iraqi militias increase strikes on U.S. bases. A distributed immune system recruits cells sequentially, scaling the response to severity. And prediction number 4, an autoimmune response. So the attacking organism will experience significant internal resistance, and the system will try to suppress it. So congressional battles will intensify, opposition will be framed as unpatriotic. This isn't conspiracy. So it's the system doing what any organism does when its own components resist a survival level response. And finally, prediction number 5. And so this is the uncomfortable one. The organism cannot simply stop. So Trump told reporters the operation would take roughly 4 weeks. The biological framework predicts this is highly optimistic. So an immune response of this magnitude, with inflammation spreading out to Gulf states, Lebanon, Israel, doesn't just switch off. So the system will find reasons. It will find reasons to continue even as opposition grows. So if these predictions do hold up over the coming weeks, it's not proof that nations are alive, but it is evidence that this framework has genuine explanatory and predictive power. That's one of the points I've made to your comments. You've said, so what to this series? This is what I'm saying. It should have predictive power. And if they don't hold up, I'll tell you that too. So that's also science, right? So now I've been very careful in this video not to tell you nations are alive. I've just presented a hypothesis and tested it against specific data. But let me leave you with the question that this raises. If a system metabolizes resources, responds to threats, reproduces its pattern, evolves through selection pressure, and defends itself with lethal force, at what point do we stop calling it institutional momentum and start asking whether we're looking at something with its own form of awareness? In the 1600s, Leeuwenhoek discovered microscopic life, and it took 183 years for the scientific establishment to accept that cells were living things. We might be making the same conceptual error in the other direction, unable to recognize life at scales larger than ourselves because we're inside it. The 27% number isn't just a political statistic, it's data. And if this framework is right, it's telling us something profound. It's telling us we may be components in a system that operates at scales we can barely comprehend, making decisions we did not authorize for reasons we all struggle to understand. It's not because democracy is broken, but because that's what it looks like to be a cell in a larger body. So whether that body is alive, truly alive in any meaningful sense, is a question I think deserves serious investigation. Not dismissal, not metaphor, investigation. As always, future observations will confirm or refute these ideas. I think either outcome deepens our understanding of the world and the universe. Thank you for watching this far. Please hit the like button and subscribe for future videos. I'm Chris Lato. Welcome to our fractal universe. Have a great day. Peace.